This is Brent. Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com. And this is a Common Lawyer Comments concerning our common law, our law of the land, as it is compared and contrasted with its ever-present antagonist on every continent and in every age, the law of the city, the law of the land versus the law of the city. And our law of the land comes in 2 volumes. The laws of nature, unwritten in the nature of creation, our common law, meant to be observed by man, not written down, lex non scripta. And then the laws of nature's God, lex scripta, written down. And we're going to talk about both of those, but we're going to start with a verse. Out of the only piece of wisdom literature in the New Testament. See, we have what we call, the ancients called, the Hebrews called, the Semitic people, the Arabs, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and the Israelites, all that bunch over there. They call this wisdom literature. Wisdom literature, a special genre of literature. The book of Proverbs, the Old Testament, the book of Psalms, the book of Ecclesiastes. Those are classic pieces of Semitic wisdom literature. Wisdom, remember this, when you hear about wisdom in the Old Testament, you're not talking about a guy that's smart. You're not talking about a guy that knows a lot of stuff. You're not talking about some highfalutin university professor someplace with 3 PhDs educated beyond his intelligence. You're not talking about that. Chachma, they were guttural too, those Hebrews. Chachma, right out of the throat. That's their word translated in the Old Testament, wisdom. Chachma. It's the theme of the book of Proverbs. But wisdom isn't known a lot. Not in the Semitic world. No, wisdom is doing what you know. And some of the wisest people in the world didn't know much, but they did a whole lot with what they did know. Let me repeat that. That bears repeating. To them, Chachma, a man that had Chachma, may be one of the most unlearned men in their circles. But he does a whole lot. With what little he has, he's called Chachma. Because to them, a thing had no being, B-E-I-N-G, unless it had action. To us in the West, foolishly, we say that being exists and action's not necessary. So you got some guy lock himself in an oven. Oh yeah, there's a man who really did, a Frenchman. What was that boy's name? Locked himself in an oven in a range in the kitchen. Let's see, his name was Descartes. Descartes locked himself in an oven. And he sat there for a long time. So he wouldn't be bothered, he'd be alone. And he would try to determine whether or not he existed. They let him out later. And his first words were, I think, therefore I am. See, that's the verb of being in English. That's one form. You have are, is, was, am, were, past tense, being, that's the participle. That's all the same word, all the same concept. Being, existence in the Latin, exist is the Latin word for being. He said, I know I have been because I am. Well, they never had those kind of silly discussions in the Semitic world. And then here's another silly one. In the New Age religions, the Far Eastern religions, that's where you cross your legs and you put your finger like this so you get the electrical connections. Oh, I know all about it. I've been around these guys. You cross your legs, you set your arm like this on your wrist on your knees, and you shut your eyes and you contemplate your belly button until you think you have no existence. You don't think you exist anymore. You have no being. God's point of view spits on those ideas and laughs at them to silliness. Why? Because God says things do have being if they have action. That's what God says. No action, no being. Well, what if you're a quadriplegic? Well, you can blink your eyes. Descartes is a Frenchman. By the way, he was a Christian man, from what I understand. But he's still trying to figure this out because he was trapped in this Aristotelian, Platonic idea of the necessity of being before action. That's not the proof. The proof is action. And when you see Chachma, wisdom, true wisdom, God's wisdom, which puts the wise man of the world to shame, says the Bible. All the wisdom of this world is shameful, the Bible teaches, in face of the man, the nobody, the nothing, the uneducated man, the woman, least esteemed in this world that God has given new birth to. He knows something. She knows something. That's what the book says. That's what Jesus Christ says. That's the record. And it's a reliable record, evidentiary-wise. So, wisdom. James, the book James, is the only piece of wisdom literature in the New Testament. The dumbest guy in the world in the mind of the Semite is the guy that knows to do right and doesn't. Doesn't Paul say that? Paul makes that point. And he's speaking to a Greek Western world, Italians and Greeks, and Spaniards. Hellenized, as they said in the old ancient world. He said, to him that knoweth to do right, to do good, and doeth it not. As to him, it is breaking the law. That terse little Anglo-Saxon word, 3 letters, sin. To him, it is sin. It means to overstep law, God's law. Well, we're in James, that only piece of wisdom literature in the New Testament. It's a Semitic wisdom literature. That's what we call it. Chapter 1, half-brother to Jesus Christ, James. Chapter 1, verse 8. Says this, popularly, a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. That's what it says. That's the King Jimmy's boys translated it that way. A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. What does that mean? Well, let's dive a little deeper here. We're snorkeling on the surface. Is a double-minded man unstable in all of his ways? Yeah, that's true. There's nothing wrong with that. But this has more color to it than that. It doesn't say double-minded. It says a man who has 2 breathing souls. The Greek word for mind is not there. Nous, N-O-U-S. In the English, it's pronounced that way. The word mind's not there. What's there? Suke. We get our word physical from it. Physical. It means breathing soul, physical life. The breath of life of the Old Testament. It says a 2 breathing souled gentleman is a dither. A dither. I like that word because it gets the Greek word better than anything I could find, and it's an English word, not used much, but I remember the older folk at home would say, well, he's all a dither. All a dither. What does that mean? Well, I didn't stop to look it up, but it means that he's first here, and then he's there, and then he's over here, and then he's here. He's just all over the lot. You can't tell what he's thinking, where he's going, what he's doing. James says he's got 2 breathing souls going here. Let's put it in a little simpler terms. This word, breathing soul, has to do with physical life. He's leading 2 lives. He's leading 2 lives. Heard Tucker Carlson say not long ago, no, he's like me, he's in his basement or someplace doing podcasts now. The only difference between me and him, or the biggest difference, is He's well known and I'm not. That's the only difference. I don't know whether he has more to say than me or not. He has a lot to say about politics. He's never run for office. What does he know about it? Well, I like the guy, don't get me wrong. And I like the interviews he does. And he seemed to be a right-headed man. Did you know that Tucker Carlson had a great-great-grandpa who owned more land in California than any man ever? That's a true story. And what I remember, I forget the guy's name. That was his great-great-grandpa. He's a long-time generation Californian, Tucker. He lives in the East now. But his grandpa had a lot of land, and he farmed some of it, of course. A lot of it he didn't. But when it come time to do the threshing, people come around looking for a job, and a lot of them didn't have a home. They were just folk looking for a job, men, mostly. And then a lot of vagabonds would come by because they'd had big meals, and they want something to eat. And he was a very generous man, but he said this. Now, this is what I remember about him. This says something about Tucker's family. He said this. He told his servants and employees, you can feed all the hobos that come along, but we're not going to wash their dishes for them. We got plates that have been used. You give them a plate that somebody else has used. Do not wash it. If he wants to wash it, he can wash it. We'll let him do it. But we're not going to just give him food on a clean plate. I'll give him food, but he's got to wash his own dishes. Now, this great-great-granddad of Tucker's was more colorful than that. He was, I believe, a German immigrant, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he was pretty resourceful in a lot of ways, more ways. What he wanted, he got. As is said, if you don't want it bad enough to cheat for it, well, you don't want it very bad. Now, that's an old saying, but there's some truth in that, I suppose. But that's the way he was. He wouldn't cheat, but he'd come awful close to line quite a few times. You know, the richest people in America, the richest ethnic group in America are people of German descent. No, it's not the Jews. It used to be the Scots. For a while it was. And then never was the Jews, amazingly. No, it's the Germans. They work hard. I'll say that for them. Oh, yeah. There were some German settlements around, a few, not a lot, but around the Wabash Valley where these German farmers would come in and settle. Well, double-minded man, a double-minded gentleman is a dither in each and all of his roadways. What does that mean, a dither? That means he's living two physical lives. Yeah. It doesn't say double-minded. It says saying he lives two lives. Well, Tucker was the one. The reason I brought up Tucker, he's the one that said, look, I've been in Washington, D.C., inside the Beltway for decades. And there's nobody in the United States Congress, nobody, that isn't living two lives, that don't have skeletons in their closet. Nobody. Republicans, Democrats, it's all the same. And if that's true, okay, I take it that's true. I've been to Washington, D.C. more times than I could ever count. I've stayed near the Hill, on the Hill. I've been all over the Hill. I've been to fundraisers there. That's where you go to get money if you're running for office. And I was going through a door one time in the Cannon Building. That's the biggest office building for congressmen, named after Papa Joe Cannon, who used to be congressman back where I'm from. Papa Joe Cannon, Speaker of the House. Until 1910, I believe, they called him Papa Joe. They said that he always had a cigar in his mouth. He said the smoldering tip of Papa Joe's cigar was more in danger of flood than fire. That's the kind of guy he was. He's rough as a cob. He was the only man. He prosecuted Abraham Lincoln's stepmother for shoplifting. Right near neighboring county where I grew up, along the Wabash. Oh, he didn't like Lincoln that much. He's Republican. He's the one that said this country don't need no more legislation. This country don't need no more legislation. He blocked legislation. That's all he ever did. He was right. Huh. He's the one that said when Teddy Roosevelt became president, he was Speaker of the House. He said, Teddy Roosevelt's got about as much respect for the Constitution of the United States as a tomcat would have for a marriage license. Was he right? Yeah, he was right. Old Papa Joe, I was going into the Cannon Building, named after Papa Joe. I was going in the door, as those revolving doors where you get in and you're stuck in there until it revolves around and you get out. Congressman Dan Manzullo was in this little place with me and my wife. We were all three in there. He stopped the door for just a minute. We're just stuck in there, standing right next to each other. He said, I didn't want to say this anyplace else because who knows where the microphones are around here. He said, I'll tell you something. You tell me if I'm right. You've been here quite a bit now. Have you figured out that this town is a town of nothing but prostitution? Nothing but prostitution. I said, okay. He'd been there for years. No, it wasn't Dan. It was Don Manzullo. Don. This is a town of nothing but prostitution. Physical prostitution, mental prostitution, spiritual prostitution. It's nothing but prostitution. I said, okay, and then we slid on through. I've been thinking about that ever since. I can see it. Every man there, they try to compromise him with a hooker, or several. Some of them just dive in whole hog. And they get the glossy 8x10s, they got them. They'll do anything they tell them to do while appearing to be conservative. Oh, they're all there. But a double-minded man, if they're living two lives, and he speaks here, uses the word for gentleman, not man, gentleman, special word. I'm related to the word for man, anthropos, but it's special. It's one syllable, is a dither in each of all his roadways. He's just wandering around, bouncing off the walls, going this, jumping off onto his horse, and riding off in all directions. Do you think there's going to be any consistency in Washington, D.C.? Forget it. That's not the answer, friends. There's not going to be any change in that. And if there is a change, I'm looking for DJ to do some stuff. Just keep in mind, 4 years goes fast. And as soon as the changes are made, man, like Peter the Apostle says, is like a pig. Don't tell me about hogs. I used to raise them. I've weighted more hog manure than I could load into a train load of 100 cars, probably. Why no hogs? And you could take a hog, clean him up, like I saw people do at the county fair. Polish his nails on his hooves, spick and span, turn him loose, and he'll run straight for the waller. And if he can't find a waller, he'll make one with the excrement and water from his own body. Why? Because that's the way God made them. They don't sweat if they got a waller. Or like a dog, Peter says. A dog returns to his own vomit. Why does he return to his own vomit? Because he eats it. That's why. Oh, I love dogs. I don't want any dogs kissing me and licking on me that much. I try to avoid that as much as possible. There's nothing dirtier than a dog's mouth. You'd be better off exploring the other end. I mean, when it talks about filth. There's nothing a dog won't eat, and they enjoy it. And they will return no matter, you get a trim, like a poodle, trim them up, put a gold diamond studded collar around their neck, and got their fancy, and they got a hairdo on the hair that's left. And then a poodle like that lives in a fancy house. They'll puke and eat it. They'll eat the dung of other animals. And lickety-split, they'll do it. They like it. The Bible says that a double-minded man, same way. Double-minded, two-souled, two-lived. He dresses up, goes to political meetings, talks a big line about how he's a Christian or whatever he said, whatever. I don't like this, I don't like that. He's living two lives. He's an actor. Like they say, politics is show business for ugly people. Well, I used to say that. I'd say politics is show business for the less than glamorous. That only fits in America. You know, in England, the glamorous people aren't the movie stars. Only in America do we do that. In England, famous people just look normal, the ones they put on the movies and stuff. Different culture a little bit. Kind of funny, isn't it? Well, at any rate, you going to get something different out of that in Washington, D.C., in the State House? Forget it. It ain't going to happen. No. Even if they do the right thing, they're going to be quick. If DJ cleans things up, they're going to be quick to run right back to the hog waller and right back to their own puke to eat it. Now, I didn't say that. The Bible says that. Don't take it on my authority. I found this book to be true, though. And what I'm telling you about what I know about Washington, D.C., I'm just giving you my testimony of what I saw and heard, having been there more times than I can count, and hang around with these people. They're all on the take. And if God works good through them and makes a straight lick with all these crooked sticks, if he wants to, he will, and he has. Just like he does with you and me. This is Brent Allen Winter. Straight lick with a crooked stick. That's what Christianity is all about. This is Brent Allen Winter is commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com.